Hey everyone, today I'm going to talk about two movies. The first one is All Quiet on the Western Front, a German movie produced by Netflix and made by Netflix in general, directed by Edward Berger, or Berger, I think, because it's German. And this movie tells the story about a soldier named Paul and his friends who go to World War One because they think they're going to become heroes of the war and heroes of Germany and return to their families being, these big people that are going to have all the medals and all the prestige. But then they get into the war and they realize it's much worse than they ever thought, and they just want to go back home, and they are transformed basically by the war. This is an anti-war film, also based on an anti-war novel written in the 1920s by author Eric Maria Remarque, and it's based on his experiences in World War One because he was a veteran of that war. He's not doing an autobiography in this novel and in the movie, but he's using his experiences to portray what it was like for German soldiers who lost the war to be in World War One. I think this as a premise, this movie is very interesting, of course, because in World War One happened more than 100 years ago. It finished more than 100 years ago, and it sounds so far in time ago, but it wasn't really that long ago. If you actually think about it, in time, in the context of time, it's rather recently. So it's very important that we know our history and we really understand everything that happened in order to not to repeat it again. As a movie, again, I think the structure of the story is very, very flawed, to be honest. I think the problem here in this movie is the screenplay. The screenplay for me doesn't really make any sense. It tries to tell the story about this soldier, but then they have scenes of the negotiations for the armistice, basically the rendition of the German army, and those scenes don't really bring anything to the table. They don't really show us how Germany was basically on its knees when the war ended. They don't explain the consequences of the armistice for the German people. They don't really explain what happened with the soldiers that actually lived through the war and went back home to basically a country that was destroyed economically. I mean, in the 1920s, Germany was doing a little bit better, but then it really got a lot worse. Basically, it was worse, a little bit better, and then really, really bad because, of course, World War One was a place where, a little person called Hitler learned to hate people and how to blame basically everyone else for the errors that everyone made, basically. So it's really an opportunity, this story, to say so many things, but I think that the director here tried to make an anti-war film that only says war is a really bad thing and horrible things can happen in war, so remember that. And of course we know that. We know that war is one of the worst things, maybe the worst thing that humanity has ever created. So we don't really need a film to show basically people burning other people, people maiming other people, people murdering others, young people murdering other young children basically in a battlefield without any context, without any personal development. I don't think this character Paul has a lot of development in the there's no character development again in this movie. I mean, yes, at the start he's a wide-eyed, really happy soldier, a young person that wants to be a soldier, and by the end you realize that he has been fucked over by war. And of course that's obvious, but we don't really ever understand Paul as a person. What makes Paul interesting? What makes Paul different from all the other soldiers? Or are you just mentioning that all soldiers are the same thing? Because I have a huge problem with war movies trying to make the army function as a unity. I mean, as this multi-bodied a thing that only does orders, complies by the orders of someone else. I mean, I think that's very insulting to not only soldiers but people in general. These are armies are made of so many different people, so many different people, not only in the context of their lives, their skin color, their gender, whatever it is, but also from where they come from and what their lives are like. And we never really learn what life is like for Paul before the war or after the war, or in the war and not after the war, because spoiler alert, he dies at the end of the movie. And that's another thing. It's really easy to predict, to be honest, that everyone in this movie is going to die by the end of the movie. We know the friends that he has that go to war with him. We know that they are all going to die, because in the one of the first scenes of the movie, they are getting the uniform to go to the front, and many uniforms still have the name of the soldier that had it before, and the people in the army are just like, oh, this is from someone else that it wouldn't fit them, so we got it, but it's okay, and they just remove the name and drop it in the ground, and we see all these names on the ground of the site where they are checking the soldiers. So in that moment, I think that anyone with a brain should go like, oh, they're dying, they're just going to die. And of course, this movie is a very manipulative movie, because after basically the first war scene that there's in the movie, they jump like 16, 18 months or something like that, and it's like, okay, what the fuck happened in those months? You cannot just jump in time just because it's useful for you, because you want to show that the armistice is happening at the same time, and just because of that you just jump in time and we're supposed to be cool with it. I mean, it doesn't make any damn sense. Then he meets other people, other soldiers, and his friends are all grown up because time has happened, but we don't know what has happened to them in their minds, why they are like they are. I mean, there's a soldier that really loves women and he wants to have a girlfriend, clearly. I mean, there's a couple of them, but we don't know why. We don't know if they had girlfriends before. We don't know if they had ever had sex before, and it's kind of useless not to know that and try to hint it. We don't want hints. We want characters. We want something that it's very close to us. Doing this general overview of the war is just insulting, I think, to the people that died back then. Even in the novel that this movie is based in, they do try to illustrate what was like for Paul before the war and what it happened for many other soldiers after the war, coming back to a destroyed country. That's important. That's what we want. That's what we can use to make people understand that war doesn't mean anything, because it destroys people in so many ways. But here we just go to the war thing. We go to exploding bodies, we go to bombs, we go to tanks, we go to people with flamethrowers, people with knives. I mean, it's insane. And in one part of the movie, we're supposed to believe that Paul feels really bad because he killed a French soldier, and he's just he doesn't really, he's in shock basically, because he killed this guy and the sounds of war are all over and all of that. But then we're like, wait a moment, you're telling me that in those 14, 16, 18 months that you didn't show me in the movie, he never killed anyone? In World War One, where people daily, I mean thousands of people would daily die in the trenches? Get the fuck out of here. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And by the way, when he's traumatized because he killed this person, 10 minutes before, he threw a grenade or a bomb that blew up a bunch of people. He knifed several other soldiers, and he actually blew up a tank. So why is that person so... he had it enough or something? It's not clear, and it doesn't make any sense, and it's very frustrating, to be honest, because there are so many better war films that do focus on the person and do focus on the context and do focus on what should make us feel that this is wrong. and this movie doesn't achieve that. I think this movie was nominated by older members of the Academy, and was also nominated because it was a Netflix movie, and it was also nominated because it was a foreign language movie. I mean, there's always one movie that's foreign language in Best Picture, and apparently this year this is the one, but this is a poor choice, to be honest. I mean, last year we had Drive My Car, and now we have this. I mean, it's a downgrade, I would say. Somehow this movie got 14 nominations for the British Academy Awards, which I'm very surprised by, and 9 Academy Awards that are happening in March, including Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Foreign Language Film or International Film. I do think it might win the Best International Film because of the amount of nominations, but Best Picture, I don't know how it got nominated there, and to be honest, Best Adapted Screenplay, it doesn't make any fucking sense that it would even win. I mean, I don't know why it was nominated, but it shouldn't win. I mean, that's insane. I think the cinematography here is really gorgeous, and I do think this is the front runner for that category after the snub for Top Gun Maverick. I think the makeup work is fantastic in this movie, and the production design is just on point. I mean, he's gorgeous, and I do think that those 2 awards are very deserving for this movie. But there are other things, for example, like the score, and it's like, what score? I mean, half of the movie is not scored because silence is used very effectively, to be honest. I mean, the sound design is very well done, but the score is not that great, and there were like 4 other movies that were much better, had much better score than this one. So I'm kind of disappointed by this movie, to be honest. And by the, I mean, I have seen many German movies in my life, and many have been, I mean, most have been much better than this one. So this is I mean, it's disappointing, to be honest, from Netflix, from Germany, and from someone that wanted to do a war film to educate you about the horrors of war. I don't think this works, to be honest, and I wouldn't use this to teach people about World War One. I would use 1917 from a few years ago by Sam Mendes, who did exactly the same war context, but much better. The next movie I want to talk about, and this is going to be a little bit faster, is Best Documentary Feature Film nominee Fire of Love, which is a documentary made by National Geographic. Of course, this can be found now streaming on Disney Plus. This is the story of Maurice and Katia Kraft, which were 2 volcanologists, people that study volcanoes, that fell in love because they met randomly one day, and their love for volcanoes and geology united them and made them create a partnership that people really benefited from, because they are responsible basically for many videos, documentaries in their own right that they made on volcanoes in order for people to understand that evacuation procedures, evacuation plans were very important for every region that is, settled in a volcan, in a place where there's a lot of volcanoes. You have to have all these plans, all these measures taken in order for people to survive a volcanic eruption that can be very violent, of course. Sometimes there's no warning by the mountain, it just blows up. So they did a fantastic job in order to teach these communities to really basically defending themselves from the mountain. That can be, very good, because we all know that volcano, the ashes that fall from a volcano that, get out of the mountain, basically they are really rich for soils and for very various plants, and in order to grow crops it's really useful, but it can also be very destructive, of course. But the main thing in this documentary is the love relationship between these 2 people that could be at times very different, but at other times they could be really like almost the same person. I mean, it's very interesting how they use basically love relationship of these people to illustrate us a little bit about volcanology and about volcanoes in general. This is not really a long documentary, and I would say that it's a small documentary. It doesn't have a huge ambition. I mean, some documentaries want to change the world. This documentary doesn't. This is a very personal documentary. I mean, even the narration done by Miranda Julie or July, I don't know how you pronounce her name. It's very, slow, very calm, very relaxing, and it just wants to show us how these people see the world and what they think of it, basically, which I think is beautiful and different, and what we want to see in cinema, which is unique points of view and how others see the same thing that we are seeing at one point in our lives. So I think it's very beautiful, and if you want to watch that, is on Disney Plus. Again, this is a nominee for Best Documentary. I don't think it's going to win because recently more political things and more big documentaries have won, so I don't think it's going to win, but I'm very glad this small documentary is nominated. So these are the two movies I wanted to talk about. This video is long enough, so thank you so much. Comment down below whatever you think about these two, and again, thank you so much. Goodbye.